Today is Thursday, September the 25th, and I hope you're having a great day. It has been refreshing to just pause longer. Adam, you and I were just talking even before we hit roll on this, that like I'm just learning new patterns in my own life. And just because I'm a pastor doesn't mean I have perfect patterns, right? I still have to vet things, still have to go through things, realizing that I've held on to certain ways that are not always the healthiest, and I need to purge those things in my life, and just patterns of just working a lot more than I should, or holding on to problems, especially this one. I struggle with this one, holding on to problems that aren't my problems to hold on to, right? Yeah. And recognizing that it's not my worry, and I worry about things I shouldn't worry about. And so just new seasons, new rhythms, new things. And the reason why I've been thinking about this, it to me, in my head at least, it ties in to what you talked about this last week, because I have a tendency to also worry about those things, right? I have a tendency to overthink, to overcomplicate. You talked about pray, share, care, this method of reaching people for Jesus, and then I over worry about stuff. I over worry about, okay, have I prayed enough before I can share to that person? Have I? And then I overthink things when it's not my job, it's not my problem to overthink those things. So I hope this is a turning point, like a setting up this question better, I guess, is what I'm trying to do with this, is just that what you preached this last week, I've been also internalizing and trying to process through. It's not just something we do to preach to you, that we think God is telling you. It's stuff that God is moving in us, that he's teaching in us, that we got to develop his ways, his patterns, and his ways of doing things. So for those who didn't get to join us this last weekend, could you just briefly share what the pray, share, care method was in a nutshell, and what we were talking about?
Yeah, so we started off, as we've been doing the last couple of months, in Acts 2, 42 through 47, and we've been talking about various aspects, the foundation of Scripture, about prayer, about fellowship, about communion, about all these things going through there, having leaders with visions, and rallying around the vision that God has given leaders. This past weekend, we talked about making disciples, multiplying ourselves, and I shared the prayer, care, share way. Luke 6 is where I went back to. Jesus models for us. He goes up and he has a concentrated time prayer for the ones that he would choose to be the disciples. He prays over them, and we said you got to talk to God about people before you talk to people about God. Yeah. And then he began to care for people in the crowd. They all needed help. They were sick. They had all kinds of problems. He began to care for them, because people have to see that you care for them before they'll know that God cares for them. Excuse me. And then it says that Jesus spoke, and he begins to deliver a portion or a version, an excerpt of what the Sermon on the Mount is in Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. And he speaks, and we said that people need to hear the word of God in your voice, right? So prayer, care, share, we see it modeled throughout the book of Acts. We see it over and over again where the apostles prayed for people, then they cared for them, they shared with them, and all these things played out. Now, we don't always see all three things every time, but we see the three things over and over and over throughout the New Testament, through the epistles, through these things here. And so we can believe, and we can infer that they were living it out. But it's like sometimes I might tell you that I got in my car, I started my car, and I drove to the store. Next time I might tell you I drove to the store, but I didn't tell you I started the car first. So we tell the story in different ways, but the three things are all in there. So prayer, care, share as a way to make disciples.
Yeah. And that is our calling. That's literally the one thing God asked us to do, to go make disciples. And sometimes we get fixated, we worry, we do all the other things instead of doing the one thing that we've been called to do. So as we reflect on that, the first question is, how intentional are you about praying for specific people who don't know Jesus? If I could start with this one, I think this was a harder one for me early on in our ministry, and something that you actually, over the last decade of working with you, have helped me do better at, is positioning myself in places where there are people who don't know Jesus. I think as Christians, sometimes we become so insulated, we become so isolated from those who don't know God, that when we ask questions like, how can you pray for someone specific who doesn't know Jesus? You go, I don't know anybody who doesn't know Jesus. I found myself there. I grew up in the church, and then I went to a Christian college, and then I went straight into ministry. And it's easy to accidentally isolate yourself from the very mission God's called you to do. So I had to learn to show up in places where non-Jesus people were.
Which is uncomfortable at times. It can be uncomfortable. I mean, if you're a person who's following Jesus, then your life is being transformed into the image of Jesus, which means the things of the world feel a little less comfortable. They should, at least. And then when you go places where people are gathering that aren't following Jesus, and those things are all happening, it feels awkward. But we have to be able to flexibly walk into awkward things while not engaging in those kinds of things too. And so I've been talking about that for a long time, trying to be present in various places, restaurants, stores, different places around. When my kids were younger, in the school community, in the sporting community, trying to be present to meet people, because otherwise it's hard to follow through with the commission God gave us to make disciples if we are around people that need to be disciples.
Yeah. And I appreciate that about you, because I'm not saying this like to put you on a pedestal or elevate you, but like, it is hard to preach something and then not live it out, right?
Yeah.
And so often as Christians, I'm not talking about preachers, I'm talking about believers, you watching me, we have a tendency to say things with our mouths or saying that God says to do this, but our lives don't reflect it. And so you challenging the staff, challenging our church that, hey, you got to do these things, meant more to me when I also saw you showing up in those ways, right? And the same is true for you and me. So like, I asked this first question, I'm going to answer it even in more detail in just a second, but maybe the first thought you had was, I don't know anybody who's not a Christian. Then my challenge to you before that is to do that very thing. There are non-Christians all around you. Go show up in their spaces. Stop waiting for them to come to you. Go to them and be part of their lives. And now, it doesn't mean that you have to have their lives impact you in such a way that like you're becoming like them, but you can show up in their spaces, in their places. Especially around here, there are more things like you show up at cornhole tournaments. You've shown up at bookstores. You've shown up. It doesn't have to be like, I think sometimes we think these worldly things, we think of like, I have to go to a bar, or I have to go to this, I have to go. No. There, you can show up at Walmart. Like, it doesn't have to be these places, but you need to show up consistently somewhere to interact with people who need to know Jesus. And so, how have I intentionally been praying about someone? Is I've learned that if I don't specifically write down names, I'm a visual person. So if I don't write down someone's name, I forget about them. And so I have a couple names. I have a name of one of my neighbors. I have a name of someone else I've been investing into their life, and I have them in a couple places. They're in my car. One's in my bedroom, and then another place is in my office. And that way I have 3 touch points that at some point during the day I see it and I go, oh, I need to pray for that person, because that's how I need to be reminded. How about you?
Yeah, I've done it in various ways. I would say I am better at this today than I used to be, but not as good as I want to be. And I do it in a variety of ways. It changes season to season. There's been seasons where I've written down names, and I've drawn maps and these things, and they've helped me visually to think about where I'm going, how I'm praying for people and all that. Other seasons I've not been as intentional in writing down names, but I'm intentional in meeting with people and with going places. And there's 2 or 3 places in particular that I go on a regular basis. And some seasons I go there like twice a week. I'll pop in there or more. Other seasons I go there once every week or two. And so it changes for me how I do it. Because one thing I've learned is that rhythm is good, and predictability is where we find safety in our rhythms and help people to follow us and all that. Predictability and rhythms bore me after a while. I need some kind of change. I need to do things a little differently. So I move season to season how I do that. And currently I'm in a season where I've not been writing names down as much, but I've been going places and seeing people. And just yesterday, even there's one friend I've formed over the last many years, and I visit this individual quite a bit. Not a follower of Jesus, and just yesterday I was out early in the morning. I was running an errand, early 7 in the morning, something like that. And I went to a gas station and he was there. And so I got to talking to him right there, and he came over and he's like, "Hey, can I buy your drink for you?" And I was like, "Sure." I mean, first of all, free drink. But more than that, there's a principle, and I'm on a rabbit trail, but that's what I do.
It's all good.
There's in Luke 9, Luke 10, Jesus tells the disciples to go out, and he tells them to look for people of peace.
Yes.
And the things he describes as a person of peace are that they'll listen to you, they want to be around you, they'll serve you a little bit, and once they begin to serve, that deepens the relationship, and it's not about getting served. We came to serve others, not to be served, but there's an element where that's an open door, an opportunity. And so yesterday he bought my little drink. It was I don't know, $1.25, whatever it was there at the gas station, but I saw that as a neon flashing light of we're at a new level. This is opportunity right here. And So I've been praying for him all day yesterday and today. So that's how I do it, kind of.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying, and I think what I need you all to recognize is there's not a pattern that it's this way every time. It's different. I think sometimes we also as Christians run into the thing of, oh, I can't do it Keenan's way, so we just don't do it. God is creative. And God actually put creativity inside of you as well. And he's wired you differently than me. He's wired you differently than Adam. And all we're trying to do is provide you with tools and say, this is how it works for us. But the principle is what matters. You need to be praying for somebody. So try some methods. If they don't work, don't feel like you're an epic failure. You've just figured out how you're not wired. And that means it's actually a victory for you, because now you know, okay, this is not how I'm called to do it. So how am I in this season called to do it? And if you want more tools and tips on praying for people, let us know. We got you have books all around here, but everyone has different ways of doing things. We've tried different things in different seasons, so they might work for you. And just the last thing I want to wrap up with our time together is, why do we often feel the pressure to come up with something new or different instead of just following Jesus's model?
I think this is my theory. All right, we could debate this probably, and I don't have a lot to back it up right now. My theory is that we feel pressure to come up with new ways, new models, and new things because at our core, our human nature doesn't. We tend to run away from hard things, and we tend to run away from things that require submission to somebody else's will and plan. And so instead of looking back at the scriptures and the foundation we have there and saying, that's what happened there, it worked, I should do this and submit to that. Instead of doing that, I want to do things that I can control, that are my way. And so we tend to make up new models and new ways, and that reason right there. I just read a great article earlier actually, by a guy named Curtis Erskine. There's a group called Renew. I do a little work with them, renew.org. You can look it up. And he wrote an article that the title was we need to normalize conforming to the image of Jesus, because we don't do that very often. We actually make up excuses and other models and ways so we can conform to this or that or this or that, and not fully submit. And my theory is that it's all about submission.
Yeah, I think you are totally right. And I think, but on top of that, I was thinking about it earlier. I think for my problem is not that I don't want to submit, because I do. It's a submission thing. But I think it's also in my head, it can't be this easy thing. So that's what I struggle with. Like, so because Jesus says, just do this. And I feel like, okay, I've done that. And he says, just keep doing that. And I feel like, but it can't be this easy, because so then I add something to it, or I add something to it, because I think, it has to be that plus that too. And he's like, no, it's just this. I think so often in the New Testament, in the Bible, when God calls us to do something, he says, just do this, follow my pattern. And we do it over and over and over again. And we think, maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe I need to add more.
I wonder if this is when we revealed that we didn't talk about this ahead of time.
We didn't.
This is off the cuff. You said easy. I wonder if you mean simple.
Yes. There. Yes. I mean simple.
Because it's not always easy.
That's a good point.
But simple, right?
It seems too elementary or simple to me. Not that it's necessarily an easy task to do, but like it's only 2 steps or it's only 3 steps when I feel like it should be 15 steps. And so then I add more steps to it because I feel like it needs to be more complicated.
You know, I preached a sermon a while back, and I don't remember all the things I say. Sometimes they blur together for me, just like they do for you. But I do remember this one, because this weekend I thought of it again as I was this last weekend preaching that we needed the prayer, care, share way, right? Because this is not a new thing. If you listen long enough, you'll learn that we say the same kinds of things all the time, right? Prayer, care, share. We need to be reminded of them. That's why we do it all the time. I preached a sermon a while back. It's been in the last year or so. I said we needed to preach. Remember this one? Preach, pray, persist. Repeat, right? Preach, pray, persist. Or sorry, pray, preach, pray, persist, repeat. Whatever the order was. And I had somebody come up critical of things, saying that was too simple. It seemed like a self-help thing, and it wasn't. It started in Scripture. I promise you that. We start with Jesus, but there had to be more to it, they said, than that. And I think we do. We overcomplicate the thing instead of just doing the simple pathway that Jesus gave us.
Well, and I think it's not just something that we do. Again, it goes back to the early New Testament. You see Jesus told his disciples, go do this. And they came back, okay, what's more? And he's like, well, just do that. like there has to be more, because they felt even. I think it's a human thing to do. We Jesus boils it down to just the thing, and we like to add to it all the time. And it's not our job to add to it. It's not our job to perfect it. It's our job to trust it. And it's really hard in seasons to do, because sometimes it feels too simple. And I use the word easy. You're correct. I meant simplistic. Like there has to be more, but there's not. Sometimes I think it's Paul who writes that God uses the simple things to confuse the wise, or there's something in that
paraphrase.
It's a Keenan paraphrase, okay? But the point being that sometimes he just uses these simple things over and over again, and people go, there has to be more, and he's like, there's not. It's just that simple. Just trust me.
I think it's that trusting. I think there's an element too of our human nature and the arrogance of our humanity, thinking that Jesus did this, but that was so long ago. We know more now, right? Technology and science and history, and we can just do this, and it'll actually improve on what Jesus said. And I think we do. We try to improve on it too. And
well, because it's, again, like you said, it's their nature. As part of being humans, our design, how we do things, is literally to improve on the generation who came before us. Like, this is actually something I've had conversations with my dad and my grandpa about. How I lived for Jesus this way, and I want you to live even better, because learn from me, right? And I think, but because of that, it opens the door for, okay, I learned from you, but what can I add? And so, no, well, these things you don't actually add to. I just want you to start here instead of starting way back there where I did. So I hope that's good for you all. I hope that really helps you all wrestle through things. Again, Adam and I wrestle through these things. We don't have these things perfect. And I hope you're catching that when you watch these videos, is that there's not two perfect men sitting before you. It's guys who are literally just trying to live out this Jesus stuff too. Just like you. We are messy. We don't get it perfect. We make mistakes, but we're trying to be obedient. And we're just calling you to faithful obedience with us. Adam, we're wrapping up this coming weekend, the last weekend in our community series. Can you give us a sneak peek for that, and like what you're going to be wrestling through and talking through?
Yeah, so we've talked through Acts 2:42-47 so many times now. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. We could say it together, maybe. We've read this over and over and over again. We've talked about these elements of what the church was, how it's community church at its best, and we want that for ourselves. We're going to wrap the whole thing up by asking the question, now what? Or what now? And what do we do? We know these things now. What do we do? And I think it's going to be encouraging to you. And I think you might hear a lot of elements in there about how, now what do we do? Well, now we just start with Jesus, and we submit ourselves to the image of Jesus. It's a little bit like we've been talking about right here. And I'm looking forward to that. So join us this weekend. Join us here, and we'll plow through together, and we'll just listen to what God's saying to us as we continue to conform ourselves, submit ourselves to who Jesus looks like, and we'll see the results, I think, that Jesus wants for his church.
Yeah, so join us Saturday night at North Heights campus at 6 o'clock, Sunday morning at our Carl Junction campus at 8, 9:30, or 11, or you can join us online live at 9:30 or on demand later, but make gathering priority. Make getting together with God's people the thing. In church, until we see each other again, you are sent. Have a great day.